Imagine you are at a race. On the left, the greatest warrior of the ancient world, Achilles, fastest man alive, never lost a race, never lost a battle. On the right, a tortoise, old, slow, barely moving. The tortoise gets a head start, just a small one, 100 meters. Achilles laughs. The crowd laughs. This is not a race. This is a joke. And then, the most brilliant and most dangerous philosopher in the ancient world steps forward. His name is Zeno of Elea, and he says, Achilles cannot win this race. Not won't, cannot. The crowd goes silent. Zeno continues, listen carefully. Before Achilles can reach the tortoise, he must first reach the point where the tortoise started. 100 meters, fine, easy. But while Achilles ran those 100 meters, the tortoise moved forward. Not far, maybe 10 meters, but forward. Now Achilles must cover those 10 meters. Fine, still easy. But while Achilles ran those 10 meters, the tortoise moved again. 1 meter, but forward. And while Achilles covers that 1 meter, the tortoise moves 1/10 of a meter. And while Achilles covers that 10th, the tortoise moves 1/100th. This never ends. Every time Achilles reaches where the tortoise was, the tortoise has moved. The gap gets smaller, infinitely smaller, but it never reaches zero. And Zeno looks at the crowd and asks, so, how does Achilles win? The crowd has no answer. 2,500 years later, neither do we. This man's name was Zeno of Elea, born around 490 BC in the Greek colony of Elea in what is now southern Italy. A student of Parmenides, the philosopher who believed that reality was one, motionless and unchanging. And Zeno was not content to simply repeat his teacher's ideas. He wanted to prove them. Not with arguments, with traps. Zeno invented the philosophical paradox as a weapon. He would take the most obvious, the most self-evident things in the world, motion, space, time, and he would demonstrate, step by perfectly logical step, that they were impossible. Not unlikely, not difficult to explain, impossible. And 2,500 years of human thought have not fully escaped his traps. But before we go deeper, we need to understand what Zeno was really doing. Because on the surface, this looks like a puzzle, a clever riddle. It is not. Zeno was attacking the very foundation of how human beings understand reality. We believe the world is made of things that move through space across time. You are here. Then you are there. Motion happened. Simple. Zeno said, prove it. Not describe it, not observe it. Prove it logically. And every time someone tried, they fell into one of his paradoxes like a trapdoor in the floor. Let us go deeper. The second trap, the dichotomy. You want to walk across this room. Fine. But first, you must reach the halfway point. And before you reach the halfway point, you must reach the quarter point. And before the quarter point, the 8th point. And before the 8th, the 16th. Before you can take a single step, you must complete an infinite number of tasks. An infinite number of tasks cannot be completed in finite time. Therefore, you cannot move. You cannot even begin to move. You are standing in this room. You will always be standing in this room. The destination you are trying to reach is logically unreachable. Not far, not difficult, unreachable. Now pause. because this paradox is not only about walking across a room. Think about every goal you have set for yourself, every destination you are trying to reach, every version of yourself you are trying to become. Before you get there, you must get halfway there. Before halfway, a quarter of the way. Before that, an eighth. The logic of the dichotomy says you will never arrive. Every journey contains infinite steps. Infinite steps cannot be completed. You cannot move. Is Zeno right? Your legs say no. The mathematics says yes. And this tension has never been resolved. The third trap, and this one is the strangest, the arrow. Zeno asks you to watch an arrow in flight. At any single moment in time, where is the arrow? It is in one place, exactly one place. It occupies a space exactly equal to itself. But if it occupies a space exactly equal to itself, it is not moving, because moving means occupying different spaces at different times. If at every single moment the arrow is motionless, then when does it move? The arrow is always now, and now is motionless, and now is all there is. Motion requires time to pass, but time is made of individual moments, and in each individual moment, nothing moves. So when exactly does motion happen? Between the moments? But there is nothing between the moments. The arrow is frozen. Every arrow ever fired has been frozen. Everything that has ever moved has been motionless. You are motionless right now. And yet, here we are. Take a breath, because what Zeno has just done is not a trick, not a game. He has demonstrated something genuinely terrifying. Our logical tools, the tools we use to understand reality, break when applied to motion. We can see motion, we can feel it, we can measure it, but we cannot prove it without contradiction. And a proof that ends in contradiction is not a proof. It is a confession that something in our understanding is wrong. The fourth trap, the stadium. This one is the deepest and the most unsettling. Imagine 3 rows of objects. Row A is stationary. Row B moves to the right. Row C moves to the left. They pass each other. From the perspective of row A, row B passes 1 unit of space in 1 unit of time. But from the perspective of row C, row B passes 2 units of space in the same unit of time. The same motion, the same time, 2 different distances. Which one is real? And if time itself depends on the position of the observer, if there is no single, absolute time that everyone shares, then what is time? This sounds familiar. It should. 2,400 years after Zeno, Albert Einstein said almost exactly the same thing. Time is relative. Space is relative. Motion is relative. Zeno did not have the mathematics of relativity. He only had logic. And logic took him to the same place. Now stop and think about what this means for you. Not for physics, not for mathematics, for you. Zeno's paradoxes are usually taught as puzzles, historical curiosities, problems that mathematics eventually solved. But mathematics did not solve them. Mathematics found a way to calculate around them. There is a difference. When mathematicians say that an infinite series can have a finite sum, they are not explaining why Achilles catches the tortoise. They are finding a way to make the numbers work. The philosophical question remains: How can you complete an infinite number of tasks? How can something be both here and not here simultaneously? How can motion happen in a world made of still moments? These questions do not have answers. They have only better and better ways of living with the discomfort. And here is where Zeno becomes something more than a philosopher. He becomes a mirror. Because you already know this feeling. You have stood at the beginning of something enormous. A goal, a change, a version of yourself you wanted to become. And you looked at the distance between where you were and where you wanted to be. And something inside you said, I cannot get there from here. Not, it will be difficult. Not, it will take time. But the gap is infinite. And infinite gaps cannot be crossed. Zeno put mathematics to that feeling. He proved, with perfect logic, that the gap between where you are and where you want to be contains an infinite number of steps. And he was right. Every real journey does contain an infinite number of steps. Every significant transformation does require crossing an uncrossable distance. And yet, people cross them every day, in defiance of the logic. Achilles does catch the tortoise. We have seen it happen. The arrow does reach its target. We have watched it land. You have crossed distances that logic said were infinite. You are living proof that Zeno's paradox is both perfectly correct and completely wrong. And this is what makes Zeno the most honest philosopher in all of history. Not because he found answers, but because he found the exact shape of the question. The question is not, how do you reach your destination? The question is, how do you move at all in a world where movement is logically impossible? And the answer, the only answer that has ever worked, is not logical. It is the act of moving itself. Not thinking about moving, not planning to move, not resolving the paradox first. Moving. Achilles does not solve the mathematics before he runs. He runs. The arrow does not resolve the question of when motion happens. It flies. You do not need to understand how transformation is possible before you begin transforming. You begin. And in the beginning, the impossible becomes actual. Zeno of Elea died around 430 BC. Ancient sources disagree on how. Some say he was tortured by a tyrant who wanted to know the names of his co-conspirators. And according to the most famous account, Zeno refused to speak. He bit off his own tongue and spat it at the tyrant's feet. Whether this story is true or legend, it carries the perfect weight of a man who spent his life proving that words and logic have limits. In the end, he demonstrated it not with an argument, but with silence. 2,500 years after Zeno asked his questions, we still cannot answer them. The greatest mathematical minds in history have circled his paradoxes.